Hi and welcome to School Shorts with me, Melissa Chan Green, journalist and mum of two with an interest in how children learn. In this episode, we talk about some of the common challenges your child might have with reading and writing, whether it's mixing up first and last letter sounds, having trouble with actually forming the letters on a page, or even just following instructions in class. Have you thought about this as a solution? Movement. Gill Connell will explain. She has a PMP program which she has run for thousands of teachers. I didn't quite realise its significance at first, but now that I've done some research into this, I find it especially fascinating. There will be some helpful tips for you here, I'm sure. Thank you very much for joining me, Gill. I've been especially excited about this conversation. You know I have been, because we've been talking a lot about the role of movement in learning. And I just want to start today by asking, first of all, what is PMP? Because this is something my son kept coming home and saying, oh, we had PMP today, and he was really enjoying it clearly, but I didn't know actually what it was.
Well, good question. And lots of schools are running a PMP program, and probably a lot of parents like you are a little, what is this all about? It stands for Perceptual Motor Programming. And to put it simply, it's a program that's designed to help little people develop the physical foundations that they need for the classroom. So, for instance, many kids come into the classroom and they have immature pencil grips. Or they are having difficulty focusing and concentrating, or they haven't developed which hand they're going to write with. A PMP program, a perceptual motor program, gets right down at the developmental level, the physical developmental level, and helps children to develop those. And it's a very holistic program that covers all areas of motor coordination that are going to help little people in the classroom, even just things like, walking around the classroom without banging into somebody else or tripping over. So that's what it's for. And I think many, many teachers and probably parents are noticing that kids need it more than they ever have before. And there are lots of reasons for that, which we'll save for another day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge topic, and it addresses such a range of challenges and things within learning, right? I just actually did want to point out that it is different from PE, right? Because
that's right,
when I was at school, it was moving at school was PE, but that's kind of just sport, is it?
Well, PE is a lot more health and well-being, games, all of those kinds of things, sometimes competitive. You're playing in teams, you've got to share, you've got to figure out rules, all of that kind of stuff. PMP sits underneath that. And what many teachers are telling us is that their PE programs do better. In other words, kids do better in PE because they've got a PMP program going at the same time. So yeah, it's critical. And then alongside that, a PMP program is very language-based, which we're going to talk about too.
Yeah, I do want to focus just on one part of PMP, because this is so important, especially for those foundational years, right? We're talking about directional language, or the language of direction. What do we mean by that?
Well, it's concepts like over, under, in front, behind, up, down, left, right, inside, outside, next to, all of those words that we use in education every day. In fact, in the classroom all the time, that we know kids understand and learn better when they've had a physical experience of these things, because in different contexts, these words mean different things.
Yeah. Can you think of an example to, illustrate how one word might mean different things at different times or in different situations?
Sure. Well, I'll get your audience to try this. I want everybody to touch the top of your head.
Unless you're driving, do it later.
Oh, yeah, do it later. Yeah. Touch the top of your head, and now touch the top of your toe. Okay. How can top be here and top be down there at the same time? And then we say something to a child like, put your name at the top of the page. Where is top? And it totally depends on your physical experience, your unique physical experience as to how you interpret that.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. I was talking about the weather with some kids, and we had a cloud on my felt board. I put a cloud up there, and I gave all the children a raindrop, and I said, come and put your raindrop under the cloud. So a lot of the children put their raindrop directly underneath the cloud, but one little kid picked up the cloud, put his raindrop there.
Well, I guess that is under, yeah.
Why did he do that? Well, probably because, he'd gone under the covers and somebody had told him he was under the bedclothes covers. And so that was his experience. And what's key about that is that he's had a real experience of that word, and somebody has talked to him about that specific word under while he's doing it. So he's made that connection.
Which shows how important that movement connection is, because he's learnt that through obviously some kind of movement game. So are there other ways? Is that what PMP is then? Is that teaching these words through movement and experience?
Yeah, so while kids are doing these fabulous movement experiences that they all love, like walking heel to toe across a beam with a beanbag on their head, the teacher or the adult will be saying things like, you're walking along, or the beanbag is on top of your head, or you're going to crawl through the tunnel. And so children are having those real directional language experiences, and they're interpreting it based on their experience. And that's really cool, because movement is so powerful, because you see it, you hear it, and you do it, that you can introduce what I call really nutritious language. Like, instead of saying at the playground your child is climbing up the ladder, you could say, I see you're ascending the ladder. And when your child is doing ascending, that's how he or she will get it. It's very powerful. So we include in PMP a language component every time they have a PMP experience.
Right. So that's a really good tip for parents, right, is just to be thinking about that directional language when you're playing games with your children and introducing words and showing them that there can be more than one word for doing something like up and climbing and ascending.
And more than one interpretation as well. So don't think just because you've done it once that your kid's going to know. They need lots of repetition of that language to hear it in a variety of different experiences to be able to make sense of that, if you know what I mean.
And I mean, even just thinking about up and ascending and higher, I mean, those are maths terms really, aren't they? So you can see how it relates to learning specifically.
Yeah, and they're also concepts of print terms. So, when a child needs to understand which way print goes, they have to have an understanding of that it starts on the left. So where is left if I haven't experienced it? And there's so many good physical ways you can teach left and right to kids. I mean, this is the classic, but, I will say that it's not my favourite, because for another movement reason, that if you don't have direction of letters sorted out in your head, which way does the L go? It's confusing.
Just to explain if you're listening, so holding your hands up so that you can see on one side makes it the L shape, the correct shape of an L, and the other doesn't, then you know that the L on the left is left. But yes, as you say, you have to actually understand L and how to write L in the first place.
Yeah. Here's a better way. I've just come back from 2 weeks looking after my 6-year-old and 3-year-old grandchildren, and my little 3-year-old granddaughter is she's kind of dressing herself, but she's not. So I thought I'm going to experiment with her, and for 2 weeks, when we put on her boots for preschool, I said to her, let's put your left boot on first. But I made it simple for her, because I put a red sticker on her left foot and a green sticker on her blue foot. So she would make that connection. She'd see the red means left, or you can choose, you can put a My Little Pony or whatever you want to stick on there, whatever they like. But she, within a day or two, knew which was her left. And I kept being consistent. We always did left first. And when I was drying her after the bath, let's dry your left arm. Let's put your left leg into your pajamas. Every time we did something like that, I was reinforcing left because she's seeing it, she's hearing it, and she's feeling where left is. When I was in the classroom at the beginning of the day, the children would come up to me and we would have a left term. So every day, because of course they went home and had a bath, so it got washed off, I would stamp their left hand and their left foot. So term 1 was a left term 2 was a right. And I did it consistently because then they would know that she's going to stamp the left hand. So they would know that was left. I tell you what, every single child in my class knew their left and right by the first term.
Wow.
It was easy.
And so when you say right, left to right on your paper, they know because they've got a stamp on their
where's
hand.
left? Yeah. Where's left? Yeah. Yeah. And we would go on left walks. We'd turn left all the time when we were on our way to the library. All of that. And you can see how movement just makes such a huge difference to kids' understanding of these things.
What other ways do you think that we might hear directional language in the classroom? What terms might a child use that it's just a good thing to remember?
Yeah, letter formation is one that springs to mind. I mean, what do you say I'm going to ask you this. What do you say to your child when he says, "How do you draw a P, Mummy?" What do you say?
Well, I would say first you start at the top.
Yeah.
And then you go down, back up, and around. So, I guess all of those words are directional.
Where is top, where is down, and where is up, and where is around if you haven't physically experienced it? And that's my big message, that it is so confusing for kids because P goes down, up, and around, but it goes under the line. And B goes down, up, and around, but it sits on the line. Hear the language?
On and under.
We understand it, but for kids, it's confusing, or it can be confusing. And it's even things like line up behind some, when they're in the classroom. Can you stand between Mary and Jane? All of this. Everybody stand behind me. Where is behind? It's so interesting as a teacher.
So what are some of the PMP games, do you call them, that you would use to introduce those topics or those words rather in movement?
Okay, well, I'll give you 2 examples. I was doing math with the kids, and I was teaching the greater than, less than sign, right? Now, that's confusing because they look the same, except one faces one way and one faces the other way. And if you don't have what we call a midline, which is, in short, it's all about your coordination and your ability to be able to do complex movements like hopping and skipping, and that helps you understand and be able to see the differences in the way letters and numbers are formed. Mm-hmm. Long conversation for another day.
Yes, I think let me write midlines down as a topic we'll cover.
Yeah. What my kids just weren't getting it, right? So I got my piece of chalk and I drew this enormous greater than, less than sign on the floor, on the concrete outside. And I said to the kids, I want you to jump over the less than sign, the small, the little end, right, which is the less than end. Now jump over the greater than end. Every single kid in my class got it, boom, just like that. It was fascinating to see how movement is the key for little people and how it makes makes everything make sense.
And understanding the words once they've experienced it.
Yeah, yeah. So we do those kinds of activities in PMP. I'll tell you another story. When I was in a PMP session with another school, and the children, one of the activities was they had 3 hoops on the floor, and it was a memory activity, but it was also a directional activity. So the hoops were labelled first, middle, last. And the teacher had asked the child to throw his beanbags in this order: middle, last, first. And what we do in PMP is we get the child to repeat that sequence: middle, last, first, and then they throw. And every time this little guy said he was going to throw it into the last one, the last hoop, he threw it into the first one. And the teacher turned around to me and she said, "Oh my goodness, a light bulb has just gone off." When I asked this little boy, what is the last sound in the words, say like cat, k, e, t, he says k. Because, and she said, it's not because he's not hearing the sound. It's because he doesn't know the difference between first and last.
Right.
Light bulb moment for that teacher. And I can tell you, I've told that stories so many times, and light bulbs go off everywhere. It's not, I mean, it could be that they can't hear and separate sound, and that's a thing. But it might also be because they don't understand those concepts. And that's why if you experience it in the real sense and you use your body, you get
kids
it. Everybody gets it when they do it.
And kids love those games too. So, they're engaged. I guess that's another important thing. Are there any other strategies you use in terms of understanding, how
Well, we're going to roll. So we might do pencil rolls on the mat, and we're going to roll from left to right. We might have a line, and we get the children to line up and walk along from left to right. It's an interesting concept because it is quite ethereal in some ways. But you will notice some children will literally pick up a book and read it from back to front and not front to back. But it's critically important that children have that physical experience of understanding print in a physical way, which will help them make the connection. And then I use concepts of print is all about understanding how print works, what it's made up of, sentences and full stops and paragraphs, and lots of paragraphs make a story and all of that kind of stuff. So I do things with kids, and I highly recommend this as a pre-reading, before you start getting into the weeds of talking about capital letters and full stops and all of that kind of stuff. Get some magazines or some newspaper articles or magazine articles and cut them up. So first of all, you might want to say, here's a story. This is a story. Now, can you see there's lots of little paragraphs and parts, like the print is all in blocks. Let's cut out the blocks. Those are called paragraphs. Blah, 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 blah. Now, let's have a look. Let's see. Can you see in those paragraphs there's big letters and little letters and there's dots? Well, a sentence starts with a big letter and it ends with a dot. Let's cut out those. And then what we do is we put it all back together again. Sometimes we cut them into words and we get kids to, this is a fun thing to do. You cut up the words and then you stick them back on the paper, but they have to start with a capital letter and they have to end with a dot. And then you read it to the child, and that's hilarious because, of course, it doesn't make sense. But they're getting to have that real physical experience of what is print and how does it work? Because we assume children know that those squiggles on a page are letters and that put together in a certain order, they mean something. But that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. I can see there are so many benefits to doing that, because even just using the scissors as well, and in terms of, getting your hands ready as well for writing, which is also probably a topic for another day. Was there anything else you wanted to say in terms of directional language?
I think the most important thing for us to understand about it is, and when we're thinking about these concepts, is that we need, or in the bigger picture, I think that we need to be thinking, we need to make learning physical, right, for young children. So if you want to teach something, or you want a child to learn something, using their body is the best way to make that happen. In regard to direction, we don't realise how often we use it on a regular basis. Even things like kids understanding, you put writing up on a whiteboard, for instance, and then they have to copy words and put them down on their paper. That change of plane going from here to here can be really, really challenging for kids because it's really a spatial concept. And even worse, if one child's sitting with their back to the board, so they have to look at what's on the board, then turn it around in their head, and then lie it flat.
Yeah.
If kids don't have good physical spatial experiences, and that's, I mean like being able to fit themselves through and under and around and over and between, then they find it really challenging to transfer that knowledge from the real to the symbolic form. So your clumsy kids, the kids that bump into things a lot, even kids who squish their writing up and think they can fit a whole lot of print right, up against the edge of the page, those kids will benefit from physical experiences where they're fitting their bodies through, under, around, over, between. And of course, kids know that because they love hiding, they love cardboard boxes, they love crawling through your coffee table, they love playing hide and seek. All of those things are great spatial games for helping kids to understand direction.
And that is so interesting because, you do think about, and I'm sure any teachers listening to this will know this especially, but just thinking of my own son, when he started writing, I'd say, write your name, and he'd write this enormous B, and I'd think, we're going to have trouble here because you definitely don't have enough room on your paper. And as he's continued to practice and practice, I've seen he has a little bit more awareness of the space that he needs. But that's, you wouldn't think about that being something that you learn through movement.
Well, I quite like the idea of giving kids points of reference when you're talking about this, your little guy and how he's drawing enormous letters. If you give kids a reference of lines on a paper, then they can see, if you say, and they understand direction, you can say, start at the top, now move down to the top of the line. And it gives them, if they've had that real experience in, by doing it, they can transfer it. I'll say that again, real to symbolic is the best way for kids to learn about abstract things like print and writing.
Right. Real to symbolic and language plus experience equals understanding.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing to remember too. Gill, we are going to cover this off, in terms of the impact of PMP and the importance of it in other discussions. But if people have been interested in anything we've said today and want to find out more, where can they find out more about the PMP program that you run?
I have a website, movingsmart.co.nz. It's got, and if you look at MS PMP, Moving Smart PMP, there's a whole lot of information there. If you're interested in reading about, not specifically PMP, but about movement, my book, A Moving Child is a Learning Child, is, it's got a whole lot of information in. There's also a great website that we've put up called lookwhaticando.com, can do with a K. And it's got a lot of information up there about movement, why kids need to move. You know, if you've got a kid who hangs upside down on the couch to watch TV, you might want to go and read that. There's a lot on there, and we are on social media as well. So you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, those kinds of places.
And I know you're doing a lot of coaching with teachers. Mm-hmm. I've sat in on some of that, and I can see the engagement and the furious nodding that goes on with a lot of the teachers often as they kind of recognise students that that the PMP will be so beneficial to.
I just think that, you know, it's the untold story movement, really. We're in such a hurry for our kids to be writing and reading. But if you haven't got the foundations that they need to get that going, it can be frustrating for kids and really hard for kids. So, yeah, it's something that I'm passionate about, really wanting the rest of the world to kind of get on that movement bandwagon a little bit. We're in the process of putting our training online in module format, so hopefully that's going to be of use.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, as I say, you work in a lot of New Zealand schools, but I know that you're expanding, so that's exciting for the impact it might have. Gill Connell, thank you so much for joining us today on the School Shorts podcast.
Thanks, Mel. It's been great.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. If that topic was helpful for you and you'd like to hear more, please do like and subscribe. It sends me that feedback. School Shorts is all about supporting busy parents who want their children to thrive. Follow on social at School Shorts NZ for fun ideas, helpful resources, and exclusive giveaways.